Hello, welcome. I'm Savalian, a software dev / creative, and we have another little Unity tutorial today. This is something that I really think is fun. It's a feature I've used in past games, I use it in my current game, and I think it's a little bit obscure too. It's been in Unity for years, but if you haven't gone looking for it, you might not know it exists or how to use it. And the feature we're going to be talking about is animation events. So, what are animation events? You might guess this from the name, but they are events that happen at a specific point in an animation. So, instead of starting something at the same time in your code as you switch to an animation state or however you do your animations, this actually is triggered by the animation itself as it's playing. So, you can basically do anything that you need to do in code but sync it up with the animation. So I'll give some examples of ways I've seen it used. So the first one I think is the most common, and it's the one we're going to be doing as a demonstration, and that is syncing up something with footsteps. So you may do like a little puff of dust, you may want to play a footstep sound, specifically when the feet touch the ground in the animation. So that's what we're going to do today. You may also want to play sounds along with other animations where you have certain actions within the animation that should make a sound. So for example, if you have an animation where the character lifts the sword and then slashes it a few times, and you want the sound to play during the slash, you can use animation events for that. And what this does, so like you could do these things other ways. You can make a sound that is designed to be synced with the animation, so it starts, has a little bit of silence, and then plays the number of slashes. That's another way of doing it, but I think animation events are just they're a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to do. You don't have to do as much prep on the assets in advance. It makes things a little bit more reusable, and so that's why I like to use animation events for this. You can also use animation events for game mechanics, and this one I always recommend you be really careful with because Unity's animation controller, animator controller, can skip or interrupt animations, and you want to make sure that if you're using animation events to do things functionally rather than just visuals or just sound, you want to make sure you're paying attention to which parts of the animation can be interrupted. If that's a situation that you're in, either make those animations not able to be interrupted or have some sort of workaround for getting out of a weird state. So the big example I've seen this used for is combo attacks. So say you have, again, a sword slashing animation, and you specifically want the player to be able to do a combo during a certain window in the animation. So you can add an event to start and end that window for the combo attack, and that'll work. The only thing is if your taking damage animation impacts the player and changes the animation and interrupts the attack animation, you'll want to make sure that you're identifying that that's happened and closing that combo window, because that second event is never going to be hit because the animation was interrupted. I hope that makes sense. In general, I recommend animation events be used primarily for, aesthetics, visuals, sound effects, things that add to the game but don't make up the framework of the game. But you can use them for functional things if you're careful and if you plan your various animation states around that feature existing. In this video, I'm going to show how it all works together. We're going to go into Unity. We're going to do a little demo. Some things I'm starting with that I'm not going to be talking about are an animated character that I have a walk animation for. There's a couple of free animated models out there. I don't use them, I usually make my own, but you can find them or you can follow my YouTube videos to make your own animated character. I just finished a whole series all about how to do that and import it into Unity. The second thing is a particle effect to play when the footsteps happen. I'm just going to use one I have already. If you want to just create a default particle system, you can go into your game, right click, create particle system. It's like right there in your scene. You could tweak the colors, the frequency, the amounts of the particles, and everything you want. I think I will do a little tutorial on particle systems a little bit later, but I don't have one now, so do whatever you need. You don't even really need to use a particle system unless you want to. You could do another effect like a sound effect or just print a log statement, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to be doing this in an empty Unity project just because there's no animation event I want to add to my game right now. And you can do this in an existing game, you can do it in a brand new project like I'm doing. Animation events have been in Unity for several years, so you shouldn't need to worry about what version you're on. It should be supported. And I'll also mention I'm going to be demonstrating this on an imported animation that's imported with a model. You can also do animation events on animations that are made in Unity in the animation window. There's a little button. I'll see if I can get a picture of it here, but it's got like a little flag on it, like a triangle, like post-it flag, and that's what you'll want to press to get the same menu that we have on our import animation. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them and I will answer to the best of my ability. Now we're going to get into Unity and start pulling in our assets and setting up these animation events. In our project, we first want to bring in the assets we'll need. For me, I'm dragging in my animated character model. I actually have my animations and the character model separate, but the rig is identical, so I can use the same avatar and just make the animator with the separate animations. It's fine. If you have your animations on the same file, you won't have to click between them, but if you're wondering why I have two here, that's why. I'm going to do some very basic setup for the animations, but we're not going to touch the events just yet. First, I need to make sure we have an avatar for the animator to use. This avatar is going to be from the model, and then the animation file is going to use the same one. And then we want to go into the animations and make sure that the running animation is set to loop. That should all be good. Now I want to drag the character into the scene and make an animator very quickly. Ordinarily, in a real game, you'd want to set up a movement controller with different animation states, like an idle state and a walking state and whatever else you need. But for this example, I'm going to create an animator that just has the walk as the default state, and we will just walk in place forever. I covered animator controllers in more detail in my critter modeling series, but you can just right-click, add a new state, set the motion to our walking animation, and we are good to go. If we play our scene, we'll see the character walking. I also have my particle system in the project. A little reminder, if you just want to create a normal particle system, you can right-click in your scene hierarchy and create one. There's a particle system component with about 1,000 options that you can tweak to get what you want. Since I know that I want the particle effect to play at the character's feet when they step, we're going to do a little prep work here. Depending on what you want to do with your animation events, you may want to do the same thing. You want to set things up a little differently. But one thing I'll mention is that you can instantiate game objects at runtime, but we can save ourselves a little bit of work if we add these particle systems and then just turn them on or off as needed. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to parent the particle systems to the feet so they're always in the right place. And just a note, doing things this way, they will follow the feet. So if you want a particle system that is instantiated on the ground, and then sort of stays in that position, you'll want to do things a little bit differently, probably use an object pool and point the object to the position where the feet are at the time, and not have them parented to the foot bones. But for now, for demonstration, this is going to be just fine. You will have to sort of think about the effect you want, what you're trying to accomplish, and adapt this process to what you need a little bit. So I've just gone through the object hierarchy for the rig, found the foot bones, and then dragged my particle system prefab right in there. If I turn the particle system so that it loops and I play the scene, we can see the particle systems follow the foot that they're attached to, and they just go forever. So we know they're in the right spot. I'm going to go in now and adjust the particle system so they do not loop and they also do not play automatically. We want to start them when they need to be started and not before that. So by default, they should be off. Now we're going to actually create our animation events. So let's click on the animation model. For me, like I said, a different FBX than the character model, not a problem. Wherever the animation is imported, that's what you want to click on. And then we want to go to the animation tab, select the animation we want to add an event to, and then the animation event section is kind of hidden a little bit. There's an arrow, like an expand arrow. We can click to expand the section, and then we see this little menu for adding animation events. There's a timeline here, and that's going to show us where on this animation's timeline the events happen. You can only move it by moving the scrubber on the preview, because clicking on the timeline is how we're going to move the events themselves. So let's use this preview scrubber and go to the part where the character's foot hits the ground. Right at the moment we want this event to fire, we will use this little button at the side of the timeline. It's got this little like pointy sticky note flag icon on it. I'm going to click that. It's going to create a new event. Now we need to name the event, and it's important because this name needs to match the name of our function. That's how it knows which function to call. So I'm going to call this footstep event, and it is case sensitive. I want to make sure we match the case here. And you can also use parameters for animation events. I'm going to do this to determine which foot has stepped. I could do a few things here. I could use an integer, 0 for left and 1 for right maybe. I could use a string with L and R, or maybe spelling out left and right. We are going to write the function that deals with this value, so however we want to set it up, we just have to make sure we know what value is being passed in and what we want to do with it. I'm just going to use an integer, like I mentioned, 0 for left and 1 for right. You could also use this object parameter to send in a prefab to the animation event function if you want to. And I'm going to do a different event, one event for the left foot, one event for the right foot, same name, different parameters. So one sends a 0 and one sends a 1. And I can click on this little timeline to select the two events and adjust, the name, the position, the parameter, at any point, and then I just have to hit apply to save this in the import settings. And now if we play our scene, we can see these events are firing every time they happen. And the reason we can see them is because if you don't add code to receive an animation event, Unity will yell at you by throwing all these errors. These don't really hurt anything. They don't stop the animation from playing or anything like that, but they can clutter up your logs with errors, so you'll want to add something to every game object that this animation is being used on to catch the animation event, even if you're not doing anything with it. So we're going to do that next. I'm going to create a script. For my actual game, I have a script that sort of handles all the visual effects for my units that I use to catch different animation events. For this little demo, I'm just going to create a very specific, simple script called footstep component and open it up in my editor. I do need to make sure I add this script to the same game object that has the animator on it. It has to be on the same object so that it knows where to find the function it needs to call. For me, it's this top level game object. Then we want to add a new function that has the same name as the event we created, footstep event, and we will want to make sure that this event accepts an integer as a parameter. For now, I'm just going to add a log statement that prints out what the parameter value is, and then we can go back to our scene and run it and see that this is working. Our animation event is happening, and it is getting the correct number for the correct foot that is hitting the ground. And from here, you can really do whatever you want in this function. Anything that Unity will let you do, you can do right here. You can instantiate an object, play a sound, send something to other game code, change whatever variables or values that you need. This is just a function. It's just a function, and it's called whenever this animation event is hit. And what I want to do in this function is start up these particle effects. So first, I need to make sure we have references to the particle effects so we can play them. I'm going to just add 2 public particle system variables, one for the left foot and one for the right foot. If I save and go back to Unity, we should see there are slots now for these variables. I can go find those objects we added earlier and drag those in. And now it's as simple as calling play on the particle effect for the correct foot when the event happens. So in our function here, footstep events, we'll just do an if statement. If which foot, which is what I called my integer parameter, if which foot equals 0, we can play the left foot particle. So just that variable dot play, very simple. Else, so basically if it's not 0, if it's anything else, we can call play on the right foot particle. And this is everything we need to see our particle effects play on each footstep. And now you have the chance to tweak the timing on things if you want to. You can make adjustments or add things or remove things. If you find that your animation event needs to happen a little bit earlier or a little bit later, you can always go back into your import settings for the animation. You can click on that animation event, that little blue flag, and you can just drag it around and then hit apply and it will update your animation. Pretty simple, pretty powerful. Like I mentioned, you can just let your imagination go wild. You can do all kinds of things with these, varying from purely cosmetic to a little bit more functional as well. We can add more events to this animation, or we can also add this event to different animations if we want. All we have to do is make sure the name and the parameters match up. One way I'm using this in my game to reuse the same function is that I have damage particles are created when a creature is hit, but only when they are in the part of their animation where they've been knocked back. So each critter has their own animation, all their animations are different, the event goes off at different times, but because they use the same name and have the same set of parameters that they send, I can use this same script to handle all of them, and it just works. And I think that's all you really need to know about animation events. So go forth, create any super cool animation events you can think of, really jazz things up. And that's all I have for this video, but I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for watching it. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.